It's my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Chris Mallika Bhadra from Melbourne, Australia. I know Chris as she fondly allows me to address her. Since 2020, the thick of the pandemic times that had engulfed the entire world. Both of us met for the first time on another online platform I had just started back then called Festivals of India. She has left a mark in my memory since. Chris is a Bengali and was born and raised in New Delhi, India. She has a doctoral degree in nanobiotechnology and graduated from Swinburne University in Melbourne with a 100% government funded scholarship. Chris moved to Australia in 2013 and lives in Melbourne since. Chris is the founder and host of a Melbourne based podcast, Coconut Chats, and addresses taboo topics in the South Asian community. She is a life blogger, an amateur photographer, public speaker, and hosts multiple chat shows across different platforms in Melbourne, Sydney, and Brisbane. Chris is a trained Indian contemporary dancer and is the founder of the Anando Dance Group. Chris is an anti-racism and mental health advocate and believes in zero tolerance policy towards barriers that intend to divide humanity. She is a proud ally of the LGBTIQ+ community. She's also a proud feminist and an advocate for equal opportunities for women and children. Chris, welcome to my platform I Am Possible and Smart, inspired by my daughter Kia's zest to live beyond her SMA. Here, we discuss as candidly as we can all the matters that matter. We believe in making this world a more inclusive and empathetic place for each of us to rightfully live and thrive in.
Thanks for having me. It's such a pleasure and an honor to speaking with you every time.
Okay, so diving straight in, Chris, I was telling you offline what's been a trigger for me, to start this series on I'm Possible and Smart. In terms of to discuss this topic of inclusivity and empathy that I've grown up, for a large part of your life in this country. How have you experienced or been met with the lack of inclusivity and empathy in your years of growing up?
Monisha, I'll cut to the chase. I didn't come across empathy or genuine empathy, I have to put it that way, while I was in India. It was always sympathy. When you talk about inclusivity, that time we were not aware of, the LGBT rights or disability rights or people with special needs. So every time there was some kind of a different person in the line, he or she was always made to kind of gawked at or stared at. For example, I have one of my eyes, the right eye, is a little smaller than the left eye. I've been asked innumerable questions on my face. People have made assumptions just like that on the go. What happened? Why didn't you do that? Did your parents not do some blah, blah, blah? So I haven't seen a lot of empathy coming my way till the time I was 18, because after 18, I moved out of Delhi and then I started going from place to place. Now, when I look back on my journey, Monisha, I think a lot of us don't even know the difference between sympathy and empathy. And that is when I started talking about it, that why do you actually need empathy and not sympathize with someone who just wants to be heard and felt and seen. You just want our stories to be seen and heard. And if you don't want to hear us, that is fine as well. But just don't give us the false pretense of hearing us, but you're actually not hearing us. You're just trying to, make a mockery out of us in your mind. I've started talking about it as well. But in answering your question, I haven't seen empathy while I was growing in India, to be honest.
I know we all grew up at, facing different levels of this, right? So, for example, when I was growing up and I went to a co-ed school, I think the only place where I felt completely left out in my early years of education was because I had buck tooth. Those days, I remember, there were braces was like a new thing. Not every child had braces, right?
Yeah.
And I'm talking the early 80s. So, initially it was buck tooth. I would never open my mouth to talk, because that would show my inadequate side, as I would call it, right? So I remember it became such a huge thing that people would tell eventually me, ki, who is going to marry the girl, if she's not set right. So obviously, you took it at face value. I never realized this till I was made to realize it. And then it became like a big thing for me, so much so that I actually started sidelining my own self. And today I'm a mother of a specially or a differently able child. And I wonder what she must be thinking, right? Where it's so stuck. I have been pushing her into regular environments, go get seen. I don't want you to be shy about anything, but having left her in those environments for the entire day and being away, hoping that she would develop the natural sort of ability to self-strengthen herself. I think it's only harsh that we have to put our children through it, right? Knowing that it's like a wild goose chase outside, right? So somewhere I felt that yes, while I'm trying to strengthen my own daughter, it only makes sense to start even speaking about it. Just a tryst, but I think this has been my personal and my daughter's personal side, right, of facing, or being sort of differentiated from where we stand in the society. Do you see that happening a lot around you where you are right now in Melbourne, in Australia, or how do you find it's different from how it used to be in Delhi?
There are levels of it, and there are interwoven levels of it, Monisha. Like when I see societies here, it's been 10 years I'm here. So I've mixed with a lot of South Asian communities. I've made a few Australian friends, but the kind of internalized racism that you come across in your own South Asian community is appalling. So the kind of questions that I have faced, because I'm 36, I'm not married yet. So that is a big question mark in the traditional way we think in our societies, right? People who don't know me, they have kind of had the audacity to come up and ask me all sorts of unworldly questions. Why are you not married? Are you not being selfish for your parents because you're here, you're the only child? You are independent, you've done so much, who's going to get married to you? Why don't you just compromise? Why don't you wear the sari a different way so that you can attract a man? This is unwanted for, uncalled for, and to say the least, it puts a huge amount of unwanted stress on your mental sanity. Because at the end of the day, even if you're trying very hard to be insane and normal, these questions put you on a back foot, and then you start thinking in that vicious loop again that, oh shit, what am I doing wrong in my life?
Yeah, exactly. What am I doing wrong? You don't really stop yourself and ask that. Otherwise, it's only when you're faced with reaction from people around you, you start thinking that, oh, something is wrong. I don't know why people are busy making the other person feel that something is wrong when nothing is, or making something out of it. Right and wrong, who decides this?
It's the society, Monisha, because it's so ingrained in our minds that a family unit is supposed to be a man and a wife, or a man and a woman and 2 children. That is what you call family. Now, if you're deviating anywhere from that definition, if you say me and my daughter are a family, for me and my books, my music are my family, that is not acceptable. And where is it wrong? It is wrong with the woman. So anything that is offset has to come down to the woman. So why am I not married? Because I must be independent, because I must be opinionated, as if these are negative traits. Strangely enough, none of these weird questions, like about my name, so none of those questions I've ever come across from my Australian, be it my manager, peers, or colleagues, but all of these questions were from fellow South Asians who I thought would be the best people here to understand my journey. Moving back in India, these questions are rampant anyway. Lately, my mother has been diagnosed with ankylosing spondylitis, which affects your spinal cord, and it's a non-curable disease. So you start bending, right? The kind of ostracization and judgments and stares she faces in the community is just horrible, Monisha. Like, even if that person feels that, all right, something is wrong with me, but maybe I'm fine, let me just go out for a walk. The way people will stare at you, it will just make you want to question your own existence. I don't know which way we are going, but there is still a lot to do when you talk about inclusivity and non-judgmental conversations happening.
I kept wondering all along, and not from now. So I've always been a very inquisitive individual, right? So I always used to wonder what the definition of normal is. Have you ever tried to figure that out?
I think, to me, if it's giving me mental peace, and mental sanity, that is normal for me. Normal is subjective. For you, something might be normal. For me, something else might be normal. And who are we to judge each other? Because your journey is different to mine. I haven't stepped in your shoes. You haven't stepped in my shoes. Whatever works for each one of us.
What do you think gives people the confidence to come out and define somebody else's normal?
I think you're complimenting them when you tell them that they have the confidence. I would not use that word. I would just blatantly say they have the audacity to do it. Yeah, these days, even men get addressed because of certain issues they might be having. They also get asked stupid questions. But more often than not, if anything is wrong within a household setup, the woman gets charged or the woman gets questioned. So somewhere it's a system, thousands of generations of our mindset that has been ingrained. And the other aspect that I think is the unlearning. We don't want to unlearn anything. Whatever we have learned, whatever we have seen in our families, we take it as gospel truth. And anything that deviates from that data is kind of what sets us off, because we start taking that as an offset data.
When we talk about gender, inequality and breaking the biases, and we think it's a man-dominated world, and we are being subjected as a woman. Somewhere we feel we sort of antagonize the position of the man, right? We think it's coming from the other gender, but unfortunately that's not the case. I mean, at least most of the people with whom I have had brushes of differences are not the men, actually. They're not the men. Did you face similar experiences? Or
this woman who came up to me and said that probably you should wear your sari in a different way, where you don't pin up your pleats and blah blah blah. It was a woman. And I used to think her as a very close friend, but the day she made that comment in front of around 5 other people, I was like, shaken aback, and I was like, what is she saying? And then I realized that women can be a woman's worst enemy, and that is so true even in today's date and time. But answer to your question, Monisha, a system works very well when you can get it to activate through the antagonist. So patriarchy is working because women have been bred into working it. So every time a daughter-in-law comes into the family, usually it's the mother-in-law working against her, right?
Absolutely.
And that is how patriarchy is still flourishing, because women still don't have each other's backs. To become successful, I will automatically get jealous, because that's how I've been trained, that women bring each other down. Don't be happy if someone else is becoming successful. So is that system is making us work like that.
If we are not empowering each other as women, fighting against another gender and other larger issues that you're talking about on your platform, and I'm talking about an inclusive society for children with with all kinds of abilities, and we're talking about much finer issues there, that I've been noticing what you've been doing for years together, and always wanted to ask you this: what's been your trigger?
One was this urge to always become a journalist ever since I was in year 10, 11. So I've always idolized Barkha. That's for her, the profession she is in, the way she conducts and holds a panel discussion. So that never got fulfilled because I went into science and all of that other happened. So that was there. But the bigger trigger is, I get so angry, Monisha, this hypocrisy and the superficiality that is so rampant in our societies. I feel as if my blood is boiling. And what do? I need to vent it out. Where do I vent it out? I vent it out on my own platform. Because if I don't do it, then someone has to do it. I rather start making the change, because I am an active believer that first I'll clear the mess in my house before I start talking about the mess outside my house. You take about any celebrity we see on the big screen, even Bollywood for today's matter. The female lead is idolized as someone having perfect skin and hair, and the figure is absolutely mirror perfect. But none of us look like them, right? We have our own imperfections and we are happy with it. But there is no representation about a normal South Asian woman. They don't talk about, say, thyroid. They don't talk about any normal disease that we are suffering from day in and day out. So when I see these kind of hypocrisies, they just kind of don't match up. That's when these kind of things come out from me, that I got to talk about them.
How's the journey been on Coconut Chats for you so far? How have you felt it has helped bringing people together, at least like minds together?
I have seen both sides of feedback coming my way. Some
Okay.
people have really appreciated and they've stuck by it, and they've given us honest feedback, which has helped us as well to grow. There have been some people who have literally come up to my face and said, you know what, nobody's going to listen to you because you deal with such topics that are a strict no-no. And I said, look, that is the exact reason why I will keep speaking about it. I don't want to be that good face anymore. I'm done being that good. You take me as a good woman, bad woman, I really don't care. But these are the topics that I will talk about because nobody is. And so many others are suffering because they don't have a voice. They don't have an agency. So if I'm at a position of privilege, I'm in a developed country and I have this platform, I will make the best use of it.
Somewhere, maybe, when everybody who's like-minded listens to each other, you realize you're really not alone in this. And that, I think, is extremely empowering, because trust me, your family members are not, empowering you anymore, right? People you grew up with in your schools and colleges are not, empowering you. Your marital families are not really empowering you. So somewhere you need to find your tribe, right? At the end of the day.
Absolutely.
And unless a person, an individual finds their tribe in this world, existing actually becomes a very difficult process, because you're not able to, and we are thinking beings. We are not just living, eating, go hunt, kill and eat. That's not the kind of survival we're looking at. We're not animals, right? At the end of it. Now that I'm crowdfunding, for a reason, it's been sort of, compared to an act of begging openly. I have been blocked out of groups, actually being asked by people to stop sending depressing crowdfunding posts because, it really spoils their day. So different levels of, being excluded in the process. But then again, the question is, do you send such comments to people like us who are being left with this as the only option to save their children? Or do you actually voice up with us against the people who are actually making such things legal in the country, right? And who's talking about, let's say, the crowdfunding platform actually coming out and creating these depressing videos? We don't look depressing otherwise. Look at me, I look nice and fresh, living a normal life, trying to live as normally as the person next door. But if you look at my videos on the crowdfunding platform, I look like a bloody beggar on the road, right? And that's apparently the only way that I can get sympathy. So who's defining these mechanisms? It's definitely not coming from a campaign. Nowadays you have amazing startups who are passing the message, digitally marketing such campaigns. No level of awareness is coming out. So that's been my Bhati. Through your tryst with whatever you're trying to do, right? Is there an agenda which you promote, you're trying to take forward? Is there a larger picture to, or a vision, so as to speak?
There are two thoughts, Monisha. One, when I started the podcast, I was very clear with the vision is to kind of obviously raise the voice about stigmatized topics and use the platform for any voice who wants to be heard, anyone for that matter. Now, when we are 3 years into it, I obviously wanted to take it to the next level, as in get some government recognition, get some government funding so that, we can hone our technical skills and make our audios a little better. But you and I know grants and applications are not easy to come by. So that is the next level. But the ultimate vision, the ultimate dream which I have would be to make this a global platform, Monisha. Although we are operating largely out of Australia, and one of my other co-founders and co-hosts is in New Zealand. So mainly this is like Australia, New Zealand. But we have spoken with people from literally all over the world. But I want people from each and every corner of the world to kind of have an idea of what we do. And if they want to be heard, we are always open for them. We do not judge based on what religion you follow, what caste you are from. I don't believe in these things at all. So if you have a story, if you have felt the pain, and if you think that we are the right people for you to kind of share your story to the bigger mass, please reach us, and we would love to speak with you. So that is the grand vision that I have for the platform.
This is the concept of making a story viral, right? Since we are in the internet age. And I don't know if you've heard of Humans of Bombay, you've heard of Better India. There are many such platforms. And this is in trend, actually. So what we're doing is not very, very different. It's something that is trending. It's just that probably we've not picked up the pace as much as they have. And it makes sense to try and figure out how they are doing it so much more powerfully than we are. And when I say powerfully, doesn't mean commercializing it, but in terms of getting the number of followers. Because today on the social, on the virtual platform, I think what one is always seeking is to increase the number of followers. Somewhere there lies the trick, because there are various ways of doing it. You can do paid ads, and you can do paid campaigns, and you can do paid stories, and promotions on using all these platforms, whether it is from YouTube to Facebook to
Yeah.
Insta, anyway. And somewhere I feel that is where we need to hone our technological skills, because somewhere we all have a reason for having started doing what we are doing, and we will probably continue without the motivation of earning from it, right?
Yeah,
Because this is something which is in our personal space. We feel deeply about it, but eventually if this has to be taken up in a more, I feel a more stronger and a more emphatic manner, we need to still treat it as a cycle where we push it into the business mainstream and make it more mainstream. What we are trying to do, make it a little more mainstream. This is how a good idea that came from one of the speakers the other day, and they said that what, Manisha, people are talking in silos. People are all acting in a good manner in their impacting lives, but again in a silo. But what people are not doing is trying to get to know each other and group together or follow each other, right? And eventually somewhere there lies maybe the gap in the system. And if this siloed sort of mechanism of operation continues, then these larger issues will always remain large, because they will outnumber. It's been going on for years, right? It's something that cannot be wiped away in a very short period of time, unless and until we use technology to do it. And technology can wipe things out. Let me tell you, it is the fastest way to spread information today. Pretty much thinking widely about this nowadays, because when life has brought you to a point where it has brought me, where I don't have a job, I am under house arrest because of my personal situation, and I think that's where life also starts making you innovate, right? It starts making you think that with adversity does that bring along some sort of a silver lining. And I'm exploring, trust me, it's only making more and more sense, because today, if you ask me, the slate is wide open. The opportunities with what you can do with your time is wide open, and it's only a question of how does one meet your purpose in life with being able to get your bread and butter on the table, and yet be able to create your own society, not just given to whatever is dished out to you, right? We are trying to progress on one side, Chris. You know that the younger generation is extremely devoted on the screen, so they know exactly what's going on around the world. But at the same time, there is this the past generation which is now left so far behind, that today, if you ask me, that it's just not a gap in the gender, gap in the generation in terms of the biases there, but it's a gap pretty much everywhere, because all your policymakers in the country are again from the past generation. Very few young people in power today. I think all the change makers who are actually doing any impactful work are either running a startup. So there are very, very distinct sections created in the society. When I'm talking about a society here, I mean the workforces, people who are running the machinery here. From a perspective that you have of India from outside the country, where do you think the work needs to be done? This is India specific.
Active communication needs to happen, Monisha. What you mentioned, that we have gaps, we have silos, because there's literally two generations behind and forward. They are working. One generation is actively in the Americanized space. They think they're modern. They've broken the traditional shackles. They've broken patriarchy. And the generation behind them is still sitting in those realms, bridge between the local and the global. Because I see that bridge is severely broken, be it any issue you talk about. Like, for example, mental health. In my own family, there was no concept of mental health or what it can do to an individual until I had it. So once I had it, initially there were a few hiccups, because they were still not familiar with the idea that how can their child have it. But it took me years to kind of smoothen that conversation to a point now that they are aware that if I am having a low day, what they should do and what they should not tell me or talk to me about. So this is one of the areas that I feel that be it mental health or LGBT, we show that we are doing a lot of work.
But it's
what
actually
happens
not
is,
happening.
you people like you and I, we are talking on forums like this, but when we go back home, even in our family WhatsApp group, this is just a minor example, right? How many times have you seen some subtle misogynist jokes being passed around? Somebody will just pass a very slight dig at an LGBTQIA plus community. So those things need to stop. Until unless those little changes occur within our homes, within our societies, the massive change at the top level will take years to come by. We think that we've become modern, but have we actually become modern? Are women in our society is literally liberal? Are children safe? Is the third gender safe? We need to keep asking these questions day in and day out to evaluate where we are.
When we start thinking of a correction at a family level. But again, if you look at India as a country, and just demographically, so and the social segmentization that we have, right? I mean, more than half the population is still in villages, right? It's still in villages, and if you see the aspects of differences, right, in the subjects that they deal with there, and the subjects that they deal with in cities, right?
Yeah.
And I'm talking about the urban poor or the rural poor, leave alone the urban middle class. Here itself, there are such massive differences, and I'll tell you from where I'm coming. Just decode me, okay, Chris? I am talking about a simple example. Let's say I am crowdfunding to raise crores of rupees right now, okay, to save my daughter from a life-threatening disease. And this is apparently the only way the government of my country has been able to find a way to address the problem. Right now, you're talking about introducing a concept of crowdfunding which nobody understands, and it's a very global concept, right? Crowdfunding is done. I mean, where was it practiced most? In countries like US, UK, when smaller companies would start, and they needed to raise seed funding from, friends and families first, and then with VCs, and, you're trying to invest it into your business or your startup. It started from there, and now it's flown into, sort of other areas like medical medical or other, sort of social crowdfunding, as they call it. The gap in the system is now that this disease that we're talking about addressing, which is the most expensive medication in the world, now a child suffering from it can belong to a village, right? Can belong to a city, and both of the families need to do the same sort of exercise. Now, that is where the disparity comes in, because here we are talking about a village where if you go out and tell people that you're trying to fundraise, it's considered begging, right? In the urban poor also, it is considered begging, because all you're doing is chanda ikhatta kar rahe ho. In a village, it is ostracized. So there the child would be like, even before the parent starts thinking about crowdfunding, probably the child will be buried alive, for all you know. Right? So they will say, oh my God, करोड़ों का दवाई है, नहीं करना है, इसको मार डालो, फेंक के आ जाओ खेती में, right? Yeah, दफना दो. And this happens. Urban middle class like me will probably try a little more openly, harder, कि चलो. But eventually you're at different levels of discrimination here from your own environment. First of all, girl child, then different abilities, then you're talking about a concept which has come from the global village into the local village. People don't have bridges built in place, right, in the basic structure of the society, leave alone having empathy at such a high level, right, where you're talking about करोड़ों के जो लोग हैं देश में, to come forward and start putting the penny in the bowl. This is like far-fetched to the level that even the government probably hasn't sat and thought about. But somebody must have said, oh, this is happening outside India. It can happen very well. So we are talking about imported ideas, right, being brought in, inserted into the social fabric, which is already weak, and such families being ostracized even more. What you're really doing is, rather than solving the social problems which are existing, you're creating and burdening more, burdening them more, because here we're talking about not just the family, but we're talking about the individual who is the subject here being, probably forced into years and years of discrimination beyond that day of, adopting such methodologies. That where we should go step by step, right? Somewhere where we have to improve, and we are a developing nation. I am personally, from this platform where I stand today, I'm seeing on one hand imported ideas and age-old pits that we are sort of trying to get out of. So I'm stuck in the middle of the two. As a mother, you can imagine my position. I'm told that this is going to save your child's life. So I want to see my child live. I'm tired of seeing her crippling to death. And on the other hand, I know that we are still stuck in the pit. So what am I supposed to do at the end of the day? And this is an educated single parent already having her own set of problems talking like this, right? Now, I'm not sure what the other families are going through, but whoever I have spoken to, it's a bad, bad scene because there are colonies in our society today, and I'm talking with respect to the children community. Okay, there are children, and there are neurodiverse cases nowadays. You don't have just autism, you just don't have Down syndrome, you don't have just there are such fine lines of differences between children who are being born today, and I'm talking about health differences that and for example attention disorders, etc., 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 right? Leave alone just the man-woman issue. Here there is a man-woman and a child who's a little different. Okay, not different with their own gender. That could be another added angle. But imagine the differences are growing, and they're growing like really rampantly.
Yep.
And the social fabric is stuck up somewhere where you are told ye mat karo, wo mat karo. Where do you think the change really begins? That is what I'm asking all the people who are coming here. Ki where do you see we need to start making the change? Because if we can identify at least two such areas, right? Maybe not all of them. Say each of us identify one or two areas, and we start saying, thinking it aloud, sharing it aloud, and we say, you know what, this is where I feel the first thing needs to be done. First thing that needs to be done, then maybe we would be all able to narrow down to a task list. Chalo, let us make a task list, and that's all I'm doing nowadays. Let's make a task list and tackling it. So can I get someone to now think about tackling it? If I have 10 people who have helped me identify, then maybe I can get 10 other people I know who are change makers or policy makers, etc. And I take my list to them and say that, sir, madam, maybe we can start with the first, few things are these that we can do. And by the time the rest of the world figures it out, probably I'll lose care. And yet they are putting us on a path of, coal on fire and saying, ki walk this 100 times or 1,000 times or a zillion times till you raise the funds. If you tell me, Monisha, these are the two things that we should do, and I will do it. I bloody well will add it to my list here, and I will go to the person who is maybe sitting on the right chair. If that person says he's sitting on the right chair, there are people like that, okay, who are willing to come forward and help, and they are asking us, tell us, where do we begin?
I think there are so many, as you mentioned, Monisha, there are so many issues, but having been burned so close, I would say mental health awareness. People don't take it seriously as much as it should be. And obviously, since I've seen my mother facing that declassification just because she was diagnosed with something that wasn't her fault. So to kind of not judge people who have any kind of disability because they didn't have it because they did something wrong in their lives. Talking about it, and I keep telling my mom also, you need to go out there. Just what you started with, Monisha. We need to help them get out there because it's not their fault. It's not Kia's fault.
Exactly.
It's not my mother's fault. It's nobody's fault. I keep telling her that you don't need to feel ashamed about this problem that you have. So awareness and just lack of, we need to get rid of all our shame, Monisha. People who should be ashamed, they are roaming around freely. And we feel the shame because we haven't done anything wrong about it. We're not paying our bills. They don't come to us where we are in a distraught state of mind. Nobody comes to help, right? They can only come to us to just give us shitloads of sympathy, which we don't need. So why do we need to be in hiding? We just need to be out there. That's it.
Absolutely. I have been an architect for years now, from the real estate space. And one thing that I strongly disagreed with silently, I did it silently, which wasn't the right thing to do, but I agreed with it, disagreed with it silently, was the lack of inclusive spaces. Right, inbuilt environment. And see, I'm getting affected by it today because of the lack of inclusive spaces in my society. I'm not able to take my child out. We get qualified, we take up jobs in a system. We know that system so well. We are informed, right? At least technically and educationally, we are informed about that system. And somewhere I feel, even though you have everything you need to know about the system, and we do, get to know the faults in it,
Yeah.
we do not do anything about it.
That, Monisha, until and unless the fire burns my house, why should I care?
Yes.
Why should I care? Your fire, your house can go to hell for all I care.
Yep.
The minute the fire touches even an iota of my compound, hell will
That's
break
when.
me, and I will make sure that I will run from pillar to post. And this mentality hasn't changed. The minute people like you and I, we start addressing the social norms, the prevalent norms, we are ostracized because we are doing something that is going against what is called as comfortability in the society. We need to keep pushing the envelope, but there's a lot of hassle that we also face. I mean, I don't even want to put myself on the pedestal that you are, because you're doing something that is way more phenomenal and way more inspired. Every mother should be inspired from you, but you are pushing the envelope. I'm unmarried. A lot of unsolicited advice comes you should get married, you should. But what happens when somebody's wife gets abused or somebody's daughter gets divorced? Are you doing anything to comfort them? You're just giving them unwanted sympathy anyway. I remember after my mental health issues, there were days when, you know how mental health is, right? You have good days, bad days, it's a sine curve. On my worst of my days, there was no one by my side. So if you're talking about inclusive, everybody fits in that circle. So please stop judging anyone who you think is not normal, because normalcy is subjective. So please stop the judgment then and there.
Which are those two things that you as an individual, is trying to bring about, or, you've been trying to bring about with your actions in this direction?
The first thing that I'm trying to do is actively communicate about things through my story.
Perfect.
I don't feel like painting a hypothetical picture to inspire or to even encourage others. If I have to mobilize a crowd, I would rather be vulnerable, show my vulnerable side to them, so that they can trust me and they can feel inspired, or they can, have their own battles. And the second thing is, when I think about, I might be a very small needle in a haystack because I'm in Australia. Many people migrate, but this country has given me so many opportunities that I'm speaking with you. We are a free country. It has given me a platform. I want to make this platform available and accessible to any part of the world, to any person who needs to be heard.
Perfect. That I think you've been doing, and you've been doing continuously, right? In spite of having a primary career and other responsibilities, which is probably a living example of how each one of us should be able to do, or rather accommodate some amount of work which is required in this direction. It's not undoable. People say, I don't have the time, weekends are meant for family, for an outing, etc. But then you're only getting into a thick skin system, and that I only want to sort of applaud all the work that you're doing. I think the least I can do is appreciate the effort that you're putting in, is whether it pays off in the short run or in the long run, but let me at least applaud you for what you're doing. This is something that is coming from my heart to yours. So please keep at it.
You inspire, Monisha. You have no idea how you inspire, but you really do. Mom saw your video that you had, where you spoke with me, and she was so full of your praises, and she was like, please send her my best wishes and regards. So you inspire.
Please give her a huge hug. I think every mother in this world, no matter how age-old in their thought process, etc., right? For them, their children are the most precious things, right? So no matter what they tell the other person to do or not to do, but I think a mother primarily is a person who protects, right? And I think with that comes empathy. They don't sympathize with you, trust me. All they have is a lot of empathy for the children. They encourage, they do whatever they can. And yes, I do want to reach out to a lot of mothers, through this platform, and I want to keep telling them that please do so without any biases, right? Don't let the biases intervene. No matter what your upbringing has been, just don't let the biases intervene. And I wish I could say this in Hindi and all the other languages that are prevalent in the country. But nevertheless, Chris, it has been amazing chatting up with you. It went on for quite some time, but it doesn't feel like it, right? It doesn't feel like it. And if we don't put the floodgates, I think it'll just go on.
Keep going. Yeah.
It's been fabulous just knowing that people in different parts of the world share the same sort of mindset and love talking about things which are otherwise considered shadow topics, right, which we don't really talk about much
Yeah,
often
yeah,
in the
absolutely.
society. So thank you for keeping up the work and not giving up, and hope to see you going places with coconut chats. Just live your life, do whatever you have to. Okay. And try to do something more trend worthy, which is coconut chats. I think that's fantastic.